Most of you know me as an attorney that does quite a bit of crisis work, also does a lot of wealth protection planning. And through the years at our office, we've done quite a bit of business succession planning and business planners. My actual client load is mostly business owners at this point in my career. And I wanted to take some time today and just share with you some issues that I've found out about and really be there for any of the business owners in whatever way we can help them. Some of you do know this and some of you won't know this. I actually own 4 different businesses. So the main thing that I do day to day is at the law firm, but I'm coming at this from different manners. I want to talk about owning a business amid crisis as we move forward. So, one of the things I think is that one of the things you have to figure out right now is what's a good source of information. And I don't know that I have that figured out. But one of the people that I like listening to is Dr. Jay Butler. Now, he is from the CDC, which anything that you hear from a government entity, you have to understand that, there can be, pros and cons of that. But I actually really like Dr. Jay Butler. He's the Deputy Director for Infectious Disease at the CDC. And he's one of the people that I listen to say, okay, when will we return to normal? Like, what does that even mean? And I want to think about that because we're going to talk about the CARES Act today. We're going to talk about the payroll protection program and kind of what it's meant for my business. But, I already got my loan, and now I'm thinking about, okay, what happens in 8 weeks, and so where are we going from there? So I do suggest, he tries to talk a little bit about data, what is the data telling us versus an actual date. And I don't know about you, but 1 minute I'm on Facebook and I see that BU, Boston University, is not even opening up in person until January of 2021. So what does that mean? And then I'm thinking, oh, well, are we going to be back to work signing documents as a law firm in June? I don't know. And so, we do know that what is happening is making a difference, at least on the death toll caused by COVID-19. It has flattened the curve, but remember, when we flatten the curve, it also means it spreads it out over a longer period of time. And when we come back into work, and there's no doubt, our state is now one of a conglomerate of states that has decided to move together. One of the things that means to us, we're from rural Pennsylvania. It means a lot of our decisions are going to be based on what Philadelphia and New York City need. And that's not right or wrong, but as a business owner, you have to understand that. You have to understand it's really not about what's happening here, that statewide decisions are going to be based on a conglomerate that's Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey. And that's because there's so many people going there. It is likely to vary location and community, although the state of Pennsylvania has typically done it across the board. It started out county by county, and then, there was a ban across the board. What we do know is that for every month that we're closed, 2 to 3% of small businesses will fail. And my job today is really to help, my clients to understand what are the issues out there, how do you need to pivot your business, because we wouldn't want our small businesses to fail. We want people to be able to survive this. One thing that's very clear is that there's going to be a new reality of work. We need to focus on how we communicate with people. And for some of you, I know you're on here, and I know one person that signed up had a trucking company. I know there's excavators on here. I know that you don't all have in-person jobs, but you're still going to have to think about, you may not have your typical morning meetings and then everybody goes out. You're going to have to think about, even when we are working, how do we do that in a way that follows the CDC guidelines? Everything I've read so far says when we go back to work, we're going to have to follow the CDC guidelines. And we have to mitigate risk. And here's where, if anything this has taught me is that it reminds me how difficult it is to be a small business owner in this nation. So this nation, in my opinion, and I won't give a lot of my opinions, but in my opinion, this nation is built off of small businesses. And whenever we have issues, they kind of put it back on us with the small businesses. And what we have to understand is that there's also a lot of laws out there that people can come back on us. So one is OSHA. So many of you think about OSHA, but have you thought about the fact that OSHA requires me as a law firm to have a workspace that's free of hazards? So what if I open back up and one of my employees gets sick? Can they get me under OSHA? Probably. And today, is not to decide, am I right or wrong as an attorney? Today is to decide what are the issues that I, as a small business owner, have to think about. We don't have this, we're in uncharted waters. yesterday I was dealing with the personal care home that I own, and how far can I go as an employer to sanction what people do when they're not at work? In normal times, that's not even a conversation. I have no right in the world in normal times to even ask what people do when they're not at my office or at my personal care home. But right now, if somebody's violating a governor's stay-at-home order, do I, as an employer, have to do something about that? What if I know about that and I don't do something about it? So what if you open back up and you have an employee that is not following the governor's orders or not doing something, and you allow that to come to your workplace? That's where, unfortunately, and I know some of you are going to be like, oh, I wish I had not listened to that, at least not with like some Kahlua in my coffee or something. But the reality of it is you're going to get stuck in it. So you have to protect yourself from it also. And so I think, at least the mindset you have to have is not when are we going to go back to more normal, but what is the new reality of our work? What is the new reality of that as we go forward? So in some ways, it's time to go to virtual. So certainly, at my law office, we're using a lot of Zoom, and I'll talk about the security concerns with Zoom. But I would say to you, even for people who are, working, outside or in different manners, you have to think about how are you going to communicate with your employees in a much more virtual manner than what you have in the past. So, are we going to have the morning meetings? Maybe not. Is that a good thing to do? I don't know. Afterwards, how are you going to communicate hours? How are you going to communicate what needs to be done next on a job? Those types of things. Certainly at our law office, we're using free conference calling. It's a free service. We are choosing to continue to use Zoom and not go to meeting or go to webinar. But we're also looking into things like Big Marker, which, again, if you're in a business like I am, where we're trying to get people on these Zooms or communicate information to our clients, Big Marker is probably where we're going to go because it's easier to get on. Now remember, at my law office, I have a lot of clients who are older, and technology may not be their friend. And so I need to spend my time with what's easiest. So Zoom security. So, there's all this stuff about Zoom and how it's not secure. I've used Zoom for years, and I get that there's some big issues. Like I get that people are taking it over and showing pornographic things, and I don't want that to happen. But let's keep in mind that it's not like they're mining my data. They're not stealing my social security number. I believe that with Zoom, use your passwords. Like even for this, you had to call my office. We don't put the registration links out in the newspaper. You can't get access without a host being on. So there are things that you can do with Zoom. Again, we go back to the media and people kind of jump on bandwagons. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Certainly Zoom security is an issue. They weren't as secure as what they should have been. They have fixed that, at least so from my perspective. I need something that's simple, easy, that most people can access. And so again, it's a balance. I'm not saying I'm right or wrong, but that's the decision we've made. Also, Google Voice is a lovely thing that we started using at our firm immediately as soon as we started sending people home. That allows us to call people from cell phones and not get the phone number. So if you have people who are working from home and they're like, oh my goodness, I need to use my cell phone and I don't want people to get my number, Google Voice is something that, it's free, it's an app, it works very, very well. I think I haven't had my employees complaining too much about it. So that, and I would say, it's working pretty well. Also, we have to know that on our phones, so on our iPhones, there's a scanner that works amazingly well. So if you just go under notes, you'll see under your notes a picture of a camera. If you click on that picture of a camera, it allows you to scan a document. So that's really important when we are out and about, maybe trying to sign contracts or exchange information. That scanner on the iPhone works really well. It works much better than taking a picture of it, because now when I've scanned it on my iPhone, I have a PDF of it. Also online forms. So we at our office are building all kinds of online forms. And that's something I think all businesses are going to have to do, to upload things. So, again, if I am typically having to have clients sign contracts, and historically I would have met with them to sign a contract, I need a way that I can have them access that contract either via email or online, and I need them to be able to sign it and get it back to me. So every business this is true of, and that's one of the first things that I would build. Like, so we're not going to be going out, my opinion, we're not going to be going out and doing bids and then meeting with people and having them sign contracts. And, you know, so what's a great way to do that? Well, we can have portals on our websites that we can do that. We also can use companies like Sign Now, where, you know, you put the document there, you send it to them, they sign it. DocuSign's another company that does that. Our office chose to use Sign Now because for husband and wife, we only need one email. And for our older clients, that's true. DocuSign is another company that does that. A really simple and easy thing is Adobe Sign. Adobe Sign's really easy. And, you know, the person can just sign it and send it back to you. Because what's going to happen is you can't always email a contract to somebody. They have to print it out and scan it back to you. That's not going to happen because a lot of people don't have the ability to print or to scan. So I need something I can send them an email and they can sign it in that email and send it back to me. So my office, that's like our fee agreements, our privacy policies, that's how we kick that off. But again, for all businesses, there has to be some way that you're engaging clients. You're getting them to say yes to a price. And always remember that speed is money. You have to speed this stuff up because otherwise you're going to lose business. So if your process is not seamless, you will lose business over that. And you'll lose more business if you're doing business to business, like B2B, like business to business versus business to person that might be willing to wait around. So, you know, putting time and effort. And I think this is important right now because we're going to talk about the CARES Act and the fact that people are paying people who aren't doing anything right now. We'll figure out what the freak they can do because they're getting a paycheck. And so figure it out, you know, like, so at my office, this is one of the things we're building is some of these online forms. And is it perfect? No, but at my office, you know, I'm not going to get into this, but like we're doing the virtual notaries. And I think it's really important. It's hard, but you know, Landon, who's an attorney at my office, is on this call. We're going to do his wills virtually because we have to figure it out. And if somebody's sitting at home not doing anything, they can read, they can write, they can help figure this out. You as the business owner may have to bring it to the end, but they can get you 75% there. They really can. And so you have to think about those things. And that's if you buy into this is going to be a new reality. So think about every step you have with a client and how can you move that more virtually, even if what you do, so like the reality is we're going to be able to do virtual signings in Pennsylvania, but it's so difficult that the reality is we're going to go back to signing things in person. We almost have to as a law firm because the other ways of doing it, unless somebody's like dying right now or something, the other ways of doing it are going to be too difficult down the road. You know, if I do a power of attorney online, is a bank going to accept it 10 years from now? I don't know the answer to that. So there's a part of what I do that we're going to have to do the signing. But everything that leads up to that, we're going to make virtual. And behind that, we're going to make virtual. And so every business needs to think about that. Don't kid yourself and say, my business isn't like that. Yeah, it is. Every business is about engaging a client, performing a service, and then getting satisfaction out of the client. There's parts of it for every business that can be done online. I would like to actually expand your website function. So another issue is the paying of bills. So one of the first things we did is at our office is we put on our website the ability to pay us a bill, to make a payment. Now, I had never really wanted to do that because to be honest with you, in other times, I would rather wait for their check to come in the mail so I don't have to pay credit card processing fees. I'll just be honest. But again, speed is money. We're not going to, you know, who knows what's going to happen with the postal system? Is it going to be the same as it was? I don't know. The President Trump denied bailing them out. Please no, I'm not negative about it. Something will happen, but will it be longer? Will it be as efficient? I don't know. But I do know, again, if I'm interacting with a client, I'm engaging them for whatever service it is. I want a way right there that they say yes to me. So I want a way that they can sign on the dotted line that yes, they accept my bid or they accept my fee agreement. And then I want a way that right there, right then, they can put a deposit down. So I know I can go forward. I would also say to you that get people into your queue. Like, even if you can't do this stuff maybe till August, you want to be lining people up, and don't line people up that haven't paid, because a certain percentage of them will change their mind. Not right, not wrong, that's just good business. So I need a way that they can pay and get in line. At our office, we have chose to do some online forms. So you can right now get on our website at paeldercouncil.com, and you can do a healthcare power of attorney. That's something all of your employees can do. It is free. We have never offered something like that for free, but we want as many people out there as possible to get healthcare powers of attorneys. Now, please know, I know some of you have done your documents at my office. The healthcare power of attorney is not the same as the one that you did at my office. The healthcare power of attorney follows Pennsylvania statutory form, so it works. Ours that you would have done in my office, they are more specific about things like dementia, some end-of-life things. So there are ones that I've changed. I can't take my form and put that online because I have to explain it to you. So for you as a business owner, yeah, you're smart to engage a law firm, have a plan, talk about your wishes. But if you have employees or people out there that they just don't have the money or the means to do that, at the very least with the statutory form, they can read through it and they can appoint a decision maker. And I think that's really important because, you know, we're talking about 2 million people that have been infected with this on a national level. And we're talking about, you know, a second wave coming. It would be really good and a good service for your clients just to have that healthcare power of attorney. And again, it's completely free. I think the form, we tried to make it pretty self-explanatory as people go through. So again, not for you as a business owner, but for people that you know, friends, families, neighbors, anybody who maybe doesn't have the means to do this, a really important thing to do so that we know if somebody's having a medical crisis, who do we talk to? And so it kind of goes down. So this is just a screenshot off of our website. And it's completely free. They have it sent to them. And at the very least, you know, we will have that. We did this in collaboration this Thursday, tomorrow. I can't believe it's tomorrow. Days are going so fast. It's Healthcare Decisions Day. And we every year do something in coordination with Dr. Alex Nesbitt. And it's really designed to give back to the community because we think it's really important that everybody has these foundational documents. And it's unfortunate that some people don't have the means to be able to get them done. I'm going to pass through some of this. So one of the things with the power of attorney, and this could apply to you as a business owner if you've just done yours, what we're seeing, we already have a couple of instances where we really need multiple agents. So we have instances where like somebody was going to admitted to a nursing home. So we have a client, they were being admitted to a nursing home and their agent wasn't available because they had to self-quarantine. Luckily they had an alternate agent who was able to do it. So one of the things that's changed for me as an attorney is, you know, there's always this balance between, oh my goodness, this client wants to put 4 different agents, you know, alternates. And it's like, 2 will do, you know. But now I double question that. So one of the things that would change for us is adding extra agents. Now, that's not as important if your agents are younger. It's not, you definitely don't want to if you already have the people that you know and you really don't have another good decision maker to add, you shouldn't add anybody. But that's one of the things that's really changed for us. Also, it's really important that, you know, whoever you've appointed, and again, I think this is more important, if you own a business and you yourself get sick, have you discussed this with your agents? What's the plan for the business? What's supposed to happen? And I think, unfortunately, you have to have those wishes, you know, expressed and talk to people about it. All right. So again, this is a potpourri of different topics I'm going to kind of go through. If you listen to this now or in the future and there's anything you want more information about, I'm really happy to give you, you know, whatever we have at our office, whatever we're doing to help you. So now we want to talk about the CARES Act and the Payroll Protection Program. So this, I think if you say the Payroll Protection Program to me, my body will become anxious because, you know, I watched this thing go through the Senate and, you know, then through the House of Representatives. I've waited. And I ended up applying through Woodlands Bank, which I thought ended up being wonderful. I can't say enough, honestly, about Woodlands Bank and their team of people. At first, when I talked to my loan officer, they didn't know much about it. But once it passed and they figured out about it, they really, dedicated staff overnight, all weekend, to processing people's claims. And I have to say that, I think my office and some other people that I know that use Woodlands were some of the first people to get their money, and it was because they worked that weekend. And I know personally, I got an email from John Engel at 2:12 a.m. And so I appreciate what they did for us. I would say to you, if you haven't gotten a payroll protection program, the very first thing you should ask the bank or whoever you're using, you can go under SBA and you can find out who processes them. If you have a relationship with a bank, I suggest you look at them first, because it will make it easier, because they already have some of your foundational business documents. But any bank you use, you should think about what is the turnaround time for the processing. By law, you can send an application into an SBA loan office processor bank, and they can hold it for 60 days. So I have heard of people who they've sent it in and they haven't done anything with it. That's not the SBA, that's the bank or whoever you're using getting it to the SBA. So I knew going in with Woodlands Bank, they weren't holding on to it for 60 days, that they really got that this stuff needed to get to the SBA. So that would be the one question I would ask when I was choosing somebody. So get the money, all excited. Yay, I got all this money. So that lasted for like a freaking day. That's what I would say to you. For one day, I was really thrilled. After that, it was like, oh my goodness, like, now what? So what happens in June when this money is gone after this 8 weeks? Like, what happens to my, employees? And so right away, I'm like, this seemed like a big amount of money, but when I kind of put it down, it's not a big amount of money. And all it has done is brought up other issues. So I just want to share with you one of the things that I do for my business. I use this book called Simple Numbers, Straight Talk, Big Profits. I don't know what it costs. It's probably $10 or $15. I would have to say to you, I think it's one of the best books I've ever read. And I actually have not read the whole book. Chapter 10 particularly, so if you buy the book, read chapter 10. It talks about forecasting. And I'm a big believer in small businesses that you shouldn't use a budget. Budgets are stupid. Budgets talk about what happened in the past. We want to spend about 25% of our time thinking about that, and 70% of our time thinking about what's ahead of us, and that's forecasting. And so at my office, we always use forecasting. And in this, if you buy this book, there's an ability to download some relatively simple software. I don't know if it's free or if it's another $10, but I'm telling you, this is all really inexpensive. And I run my law office off of this. We forecast off of this software, and it lets us know where we are compared to where we were last year, compared to what we want to have happen, and it allows us to adjust. So my executive director and I, Sarah, meet every Friday. And in normal times, once a month, we look at this forecast. Now we're looking at it every week. Really important thing to do, to think about how is all of this going to affect you. So what we know at my office is that from March 16th to now, some people who do pre-planning, long-term care planning, they have gotten on about 1/3 of the amount of clients that they typically would. So my income in that area has went down by 2/3. Now we still have a state administration. We still have, there's a lot of different components, but you have to be able to forecast what do you think the reality of this is in different scenarios, because otherwise you're going to get to the end of your 8 weeks. And that's great that the government used us as a small business to pass people money and kept them off of unemployment. But it really, at the end of the day, didn't help me. It really didn't. So yes, about 25% of it might help with overhead costs, but really where am I at with that? And so I urge you now to kind of forecast out where you're going to be and what has to happen. And I think this is important because what it does is, if we tie this together, with telecommuting, or whatever the new reality of our business is, some of our employees are going to be able to do that, and some aren't going to be able to. And should we keep them during this period of time? That's your choice. I certainly went into this not in any way wanting to profit from the payroll protection program, but I also think you have to be smart and think things through so that you're not harmed by it. And so I think, having real conversations. I also think you're going to have a flexible work staff. And some people, you could have people that work for you for a very long time, and they are 8 to 4s or 7 to 3ers or whatever. You know what? When this opens up, they might have to work 9 to 9. And are they willing to do that? And if they're not, why are we keeping them? So and again, I'm not trying to be negative in any way. Please know, I come from a place of, really caring about my employees and wanting to do the best for them. But remember, I'm an employer who, as soon as this happened, I gave my entire staff an extra week's vacation. I had very few people who took the time to say thank you. And I had people who I asked them to do things who thought it wasn't worth their time. They just wanted to go on unemployment. So, but those things, you don't want that to color the rest of the really good employees. So that's why you really should be honest about what is the new reality and who's going to be helpful in that new reality, and really think that through. Because, you need a lot of positivity, and the reality of it for a lot of businesses is your workforce beforehand may not be your workforce afterwards. And so you want to think through that. Also, my newest backlash at my office, it is nice that every day we deal with something new and different. Our newest issue is that some employees that are working are upset that other employees who aren't working are still getting paid. Please know I don't spend a huge amount of time on that. But people have a right to feel how they feel. But what it did is it got me thinking, well, why are people sitting at home doing nothing? Everybody can learn to do something better, and so the people that are sitting at home, or people who maybe have 30 hours a week to work and not 40, maybe they could get better at something. So one of the things that we're rolling out at our firm is really allowing people to increase their skill set. So we're having them take Microsoft tutorials. We're going to talk about it next week. Excel is something I'd like all my staff to be better at. And it's so cheap and easy to get on a YouTube video and, be able to sit and do that. Why should they be sitting at home doing nothing? Why shouldn't they be sharpening their skills? And at my law office, I could name to you a lot of different programs that I would like people to be better at or do better at. And I certainly have a lot of people at my office that are working full time, all out. They don't have an extra moment. They're working as hard or harder than they ever have. But we also have people that are working like 3/4 of what they used to. We're having people that are working none. And I'm not just going to have them do Excel to do Excel, but are there people, we have one person who has actually really pleasantly surprised us about her skill set and what she's willing to do. So I have, 2 people at my office who are receptionists. One is choosing, that this isn't really worth it for her, and that's fine. But I have another one that says, I'd love to learn. I'd love to do new things. Maybe she'll be the person that can do that. I think this is one situation that might be more for secretaries that you have at your office. But what is it that they don't do as well as what you'd like them to be able to do? And could they spend time inexpensively getting up to date about that? So always fun. Okay, now we're going to switch from the payroll protection program to HR issues. This is probably my least favorite part of this. In fact, I have a little bit of anger about all of this, but it is what it is. My anger is because, the Family First Protection Act that was passed in March really didn't exempt small businesses. So what I'm used to is that if you have less than 25 employees or less than 50 employees, you're really exempted out of those things. Now we're looking for guidance and it's coming, but I want you to know that there is no exemption for small businesses for this. So generally what this law does is it says if somebody cannot work because either they have COVID or they're caring for a family member. So it's a sick leave, or caring for a family, kind of like the Family Medical Leave Act, except for us as small businesses don't have to deal with the Family Medical Leave Act. It's kind of the same as that, And now we do. Now, please know, there is an exemption that we can get, but we don't know if we get it until afterwards. And so that's not really helpful to me as an employer to find out in May if I had to do something in April. So you have to come into this that you have to do it. So what happens if somebody has a diagnosis reported to you? First of all, you have to ensure confidentiality. You're not allowed to tell your other employees. You're not. You can get into all kinds of trouble for telling other employees about it. You cannot talk about it, and if your staff who like does your payroll knows about it, they need to shut up about it. They cannot tell people. And that's really important. You can get into big trouble for that, and it's going to be one of those things that people are going to think they're allowed to tell because they think other people should know. Cannot. The employee should stay home for 14 days. You determine what other employees, clients may have been exposed. And please know, like once you figure that out and you tell them, but you never use the person's employee's name. Like, and I understand at a small place, everybody's going to kind of know. That's not an excuse. An employer can never come out with it. You review the policies to determine how you'll pay this person, and I'll talk about that. You might want to issue a general notice to all team members, again, no name, and close off that workspace until it's cleaned according to the guidelines. And in Pennsylvania, there are guidelines set by our health department of what we as employers have to do. So you want to look at those and follow those. They're changing every day. So this is part of our procedure. And if anybody wants this, we'd be happy to send people our procedures, but this is part of what somebody would sign at our office. So an emergency family and sick leave, somebody's unable to work due to their need to care for their minor child because the children's or place of childcare has been closed. For the first 10 days, the leave is unpaid, but they can use their PTO. The remaining leave, up to 10 weeks, is paid at 2/3 of their regular rate. So what this means is if I have somebody working for me and they come to me and say, I need to stay home to care for my child, I have to do this unless I apply for an exemption as a small business. We can't retaliate against employees who request off. Paid time off will not be accrued during an emergency or medical leave. And upon turning to work, you generally have to be placed in your original job. Now, I will just comment on the paid time off. For my office, for people who are working during the payroll protection program, they will be accruing their time off. For people who are not working, they will not be accruing paid time off. I don't have to let them accrue that. And I have people who've worked for me for a very long time. And if they're not working, they are literally sitting home just getting a paycheck. We have cut off their paid time off. That's a huge liability to me as an employer. So you want to be clear about that. So I know like on this call right now, we have Landon Hodges, who's an attorney. We have Kyle, who does marketing at my office. And I'm sorry, Kyle, that I just butchered your actual title. And we have Matt, all of which are working every day very hard. They will still be accruing paid time off. We have people who are not working and they're sitting at home. They will not be accruing paid time off. And so that's a distinction that we were under the law able to make. And it's important to me as an employer because otherwise, and remember, I have people who don't want to use their paid time off. So they could have used their paid time off. And I have some people who did use it. So be that as it may. Emergency sick leave, here's what the law talks about. You've been advised by a healthcare provider to self-quarantine because of COVID, you're experiencing symptoms, or you're caring for an individual who is advised to quarantine or isolate, or you're caring for a child, again, unable, or you're experiencing substantially similar conditions as specified by the Health and Human Services. In those situations, here's where for full-time employees, they'd be paid 8 hours of their pay at their normal regular rate. It's only, so if the person's sick, they get their full pay. If they're caring for a child, they get 2/3 of it, is the difference. Now what we're having happen here is that the unemployment is better. And so we're not having as many people, ask about this is what we first thought. Can you require employees a doctor's note so you know that they have it? Yeah, actually you want more than a doctor's note. You want a medical certification is what it's called. And so that's a doctor filling out a certification that yes, they actually have this. And as a general rule, I would always require that. One of the things that is most important in any employment law is that you don't discriminate. So if you ask of one person, you have to ask of everybody, even if you have a relationship with them that's different. So that's really important. I also will tell you, I've already had to deal with a mask issue. So usually the ADA trumps, which means that if somebody has a disability, you as an employer always must have some sort of a accommodation for them. Work rules are different. So I had a situation where somebody at the personal care home didn't want to wear a mask because they were claustrophobic. So that issue immediately brings up the ADA, like, can I make them do it? So the first thing I did is said, well, you need to give me a medical certification. I don't want just a little note. I want a certification from the doctor certifying what your diagnosis is and everything like that. Secondly, I wasn't that able to situation say, well, if that's true that you can't wear a mask, you need to go home and not work. I don't have to accommodate you because this is a work rule that deals with health and safety. So I feel bad, but if you can't wear a mask, you need to go home. Interestingly, he's able to wear a mask. But in normal times, I couldn't have said that. So the question is, can you still require it if it's someone that lives with them, like the doctor lives with them, or that the person that they live with has been exposed to it? Yes, you still can require that note, that medical certification. Yes. Okay. Isn't this fun stuff? Being a small business owner is just lovely. So if you have an employee who's tested positive for COVID-19, I think the big thing on here that's so important is that you should wait for 2 negative tests within 24 hours. So the CDC says no fever for 72 hours without fever reducing meds. Other symptoms are improving and at least 7 days since the first symptoms appeared. What we're finding is that there's a lot of false negatives, false positives. So a lot of people can take a test and they can be negative for COVID, and if they're retested, they'll be positive. So after somebody has it, that test is not a good test. You have to wait for a second negative test. Like, that's going to be our rule at our office, is that I need a second negative test. And that's because those tests don't work well. And so that's unfortunate. But there's been a lot about that. So from my perspective, one of the biggest things that's keeping us in this country from getting back to normal is our lack of good tests, availability of tests. It all comes down to these tests. And we just need to figure that out. And I can't believe in such a wonderful nation that we can't figure this out, but that is a may. Okay. Here's some other questions. Will we as employers be able to test employees? Yeah. Not sure when, but that could be something that does happen. Will there be a second wave to prepare for? Probably, to be honest with you, but we don't know. Are there any limits on furloughs? So you should know the difference. There's a layoff, a furlough, a termination. A furlough means you're still an employee. I'm just like putting you on hold. You can decide length of time, days, weeks, blocks of time in a week. So it's very flexible. Unemployment claims, we do have this with employees who live in another state. Where do you collect unemployment? You collect it where you work. If you're hiring somebody, how do you complete their I-9? You must. The I-9 is the thing that shows their citizenship. There is there's no going around this. And this is one of those things as a small business you can get in a lot of trouble for. You have to do it via video conference. So, Zoom is free. If you don't use a lot of video conferencing, you can do that. Then once they come in the office, you have to review the documentation in person and re-sign it on the bottom of the form. There is no way to circumvent that. You must do that if you're hiring anybody new. I also put in here about some wills. I'm going to kind of skip through that. The thing I think is most important as a business owner is the digital assets. So understanding that, as we do more of this stuff digitally, as we have more accounts and different types of things out there, different types of programs, you must write this down. You also must let people have access to it and know what the passwords are. So really, really important. We see this all the time. Like yesterday, I was on a listserv, and we as attorneys were discussing about, a good friend of ours, her 3rd year anniversary, work anniversary came up on LinkedIn. She's passed away. So, and, one person was friends with the family. They can't figure out how to get it down. Now with Facebook, you can add an authorized person to take it down. In this situation, LinkedIn's not being helpful at all. So I urge you, my kids make fun of me. I have a little black book. They call it my Nana book. And that is really making fun of me, but I have everything written down. Like if I passed away and you looked in my Nana book, you could get the passwords. But when we think about businesses, you shouldn't be using a Nana book. When we think about businesses, we on our networks, we have, lists of everybody's passwords at any point in time, and they're all password protected. So I thought this was worth talking about because as you get new things, DocuSign, Sign Now, make sure it's somebody's job to keep track of all of this stuff. But also think about, what if you get sick and what happens if you pass away? Would somebody have access to this information? It's really hard. Years ago, my best friend, her sister died, and we couldn't get access to her Facebook account, and it was horrible. It was just horrible. And, we finally did. And honestly, it was just me yelling at Facebook. And that was before they could add somebody. But these are big issues to families. And, if we were to pass away, the last thing we want to do is be a burden to our family. And Facebook's a really hard thing because when it comes up, people start writing on it, and you can't really stop that unless you can take it down. Now, please know, I'm very respectful to some families have chosen to keep it up, and that's okay. That as long as it's your choice, So I have a classmate of mine that passed away, and his family has chosen to keep it up. It's actually nice. Every year on his memorial, actually on his birthday, we all comment on it, and we all miss him. And so again, as long as it's your choice, I'm not saying whether it's right or wrong to keep them up. I'm saying it's wrong when we have to deal with a family and we can't get access to things. And so as we're adding more virtual, digital assets, we need to pay attention to them. In Pennsylvania, an executor doesn't automatically have the right to deal with these things. If you've done a will at my office, your executor does have the right to do that because we specifically say that in there. There is legislation in place in Pennsylvania to deal with this. There actually wasn't any legislation. In my documents, we go back to the federal law. So until Pennsylvania decides what they want to do, we're relying on a federal law. If that is passed and it substantially differs from the federal law, we may have to update people's things. I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's going to be consistent with what's already in people's documents. The other thing I added with here, talk about digital assets, passwords, but also PIN numbers. PIN numbers to credit cards are a real big thing. And that becomes a big deal when people pass away so that we can turn things off so that somebody's identity can't be stolen. So one of the things that we deal with all the time in our office is when somebody passes away, their identity can be stolen. And we do a lot of things to try to mitigate that from happening. Okay, life sustaining businesses. So where are we with that? So, our physical locations are closed, so at my office, we applied for an exemption. We got it for a very limited end of life or crisis situation. Besides that, we were denied our exemption for anything more than that. So, really hard for me. We had a situation where we were really worried about somebody who was, had a terminal cancer diagnosis and how we do with their will. We're able to do that at this point in time, but, not everybody has a diagnosis where they know it's going to happen. And so right now we have a lot of clients kind of in the queue that we're like moving forward with them, but we're not actually signing their documents. We're ready when we start to be open to be able to do that. We at our office have to do a better job of talking to people about, drive-by signings and other ways of doing a signing. But, what I can tell you with this is that there was a group of people, it was a golf course and some other people who actually litigated against Governor Wolf's order and power. The Supreme Court upheld Governor Wolf's power, and you're going to see that in times like this. The pandemic, they're going to allow a little bit of an overstretch of power. There is pending legislation to change this. What will happen with that, I'm not sure. What I think about is, again, I alluded to this in the beginning, Pennsylvania has now decided to become a pact with New York, Massachusetts, Connecticut. with every decision, there's pros and cons. I like the fact that we're connected with Massachusetts because they are probably the forefront in this nation in contact tracing, which I think is really something that could lead to us really being able to be open in a really neat way. Massachusetts has pledged $41 million to that, so there's a value to that. The con, of course, is, I live in North Central Pennsylvania, and now my decisions are going to be based on what's good for New York City and Philadelphia. That's a reality of so much of what we do. We are looking into ways to see if, individually people can appeal their decisions by the government. There should be in every decision an ability to appeal that. And that's something, as clients ask us, we're looking into. Okay, next. I will tell you, we're doing some initiatives at our office to try to, so one of the things that's always good, if we go back to what should we be doing as a small business? I was through the crisis in 2008, which was a horrible recession. One of the things that we always know to do is to, understand that we as business owners, as much as I've talked about the burden that's on us, we also really have a lot of blessings. And so one of the things our office is doing is we are buying t-shirts for healthcare workers, because they're really getting a lot of the brunt of it. And I also understand there's grocery store workers and other workers out there. One of the reasons we focus on healthcare workers is that's, who we interact with at an elder law firm. So anybody can do this if you want to buy t-shirts for healthcare workers. The link is right there. It's the $1,000solution.graphichivestore.com. Graphic Hives is a local business that we decided to support. They wanted to start doing these things, and we said we would support the healthcare workers, and so we came together. What we plan to do, we've already bought quite a few t-shirts to be given out to healthcare workers. In May is National Nurses Week, National Nursing Assistants Week. And so if that's something that your small business wants to get on, you can email me. You can also get on that store and buy it yourself and give it out. But even if you don't do this, I think you should take a step back and think about how can you be a help in your community and in what way? And again, we could go back to employees that aren't really doing very much. They're sitting idle. What could we do that would be helpful to our community? What would be good that we could help? And there's certainly a lack of food. Well, there's not a lack of food. There's a lack of an ability to get the food to where it needs to go. So we have food that's coming out and it's being destroyed. So think about that. Can people be donating blood? Can people be giving time at a shelter, or trying to help the food banks and the food pantries? So there really is, unfortunately, a mismatch between where the food is and where it needs to go. I can't understand it. I think, why can't the distribution channels just be moved? But I have to be honest with you, that's my, my naiveness of understanding. But it doesn't take too long to figure out, if we're destroying food, factories are shutting down, that there's going to be a food issue in this country. And again, I don't mean all over. I just mean, we can't continue in this way. So point here, though, is as a small business owner, we're also trying to figure out what can we do to help those out there that are really getting the brunt of this. So as much as I can go off about the payroll protection program, I'm sitting in my home and I'm safe. So what can I be doing? So that's just a fun thing we did. I will also tell you, you can not really see it. I also have sweaters made that says, elder care attorneys, essential until proven otherwise. It does really bother me that beer and guns are more essential in this state than me doing wills. That is something I probably won't stop with for a while. And so we are, so I'm a group of whole bunch of elder care attorneys, and just, as kind of two-faced, one to support Graphic Hive and their initiative to try to do this, but also just to have a little bit of fun. So at our firm, as one of our business clients, one of the things that you can expect to receive from us is, a support staff of people, knowledgeable, and not just, what happens if you die, but also how can we help you through this, COVID-19. And from my perspective, whatever we've figured out at our firm, I'm happy to share with anybody. So don't hesitate to reach out to us if you're dealing with an issue for the first time. It may not be within our purview, but I also might know a resource that you can use to be able to move that together. I think we as small business owners have to connect with each other and lean on each other to help as we go through all of this.